When you think of great NFL offenses, what comes to mind would be 2013 Broncos, 2007 Patriots, or 1999 Rams, also known as the greatest show on turf. But one of the great offenses that hardly is ever mentioned in that conversation, but should be, is the 1984 Miami Dolphins. As a team, they went 14-2 and captured the AFC East over the 9-7 Patriots, 7-9 Jets, 4-12 Colts, and the 2-14 Bills. The first seeds of this offensive machine being built were in the 1979 draft, when they would select Tony Nathan with the 61st overall pick. He started to break onto the scene in 1981, collecting 782 rushing yards. Then they picked up Woody Bennett in 1980. Mark Duper would come in next in the second round of the 1982 draft. Dan Marino would come in the first round of 1983. The final player, Mark Clayton, came in the 8th round of 1983, which, in my opinion, is one of the best draft steals ever. And that is called building through the draft. Now, on to the 1984 season. Dan Marino led this well-oiled machine of an offense with his 5,084 yards, 48 touchdowns, and 17 picks, setting single-season records for touchdowns and yards. He averaged 318 passing yards a game and 3 touchdowns, which is better than every quarterback in history except for Peyton Manning, who threw for 342 yards and 3.4 touchdowns a game in 2013, which are both honestly better than about 20 quarterbacks' post-game stat line on any given Sunday. Considering the fact that they both averaged this is pretty insane. And it wasn't just Marino taking the load. Tony Nathan and Woody Bennett were solid running backs, contributing about the same amount of rushing yards each, but Bennett had more touchdowns, yet Nathan contributed to the receiving effort more than Bennett, with Joe Carter being a less relevant but still effective third back. And when you have a receiving tandem like Mark Clayton and Mark Duper, who combined for 2,695 yards and 26 touchdowns, you have it pretty good. All of this culminated to an offense that scored 32.1 points a game while scoring 513 in total. Let me throw some stats at you. They went above 500 total yards 5 times throughout the season. Every 94 yards, they'd score a touchdown. They averaged 6.5 yards per play, which is in the top 10 for that category of all time. This team rocked the scoreboard and set records and had basically first place in every offensive stat that year. And having 6,936 total yards and 67 touchdowns might lead someone to think that they would be first in virtually every offensive stat. One reason the Dolphins aren't mentioned in the greatest offense of all time category is because they lost the Super Bowl. And you might be thinking, oh, the 2007 Patriots and the 2013 Broncos lost. But the Dolphins lost handedly. So did the Broncos, but they had to face the league best defenses. The reason the Dolphins' loss is forgotten is, for one, it took place nearly 35 years ago in Super Bowl 19. Another reason is because Joe Montana won his second ring, and people are going to remember Joe Montana winning his second Super Bowl more than Dan Marino losing out on his best chance to get one. Anyway, on to the 1984 season. It took until Week 12 to shut down the Dolphins, as they went 11-0 in the first 11 weeks, recapturing some of that 1972 glory in which in that season became the only team to fully complete the perfect season, going 17-0 and winning Super Bowl 7. And at that point in the season, the Dolphins were gunning to go perfect again, but unfortunately, the Chargers stood in the way. The Dolphins held on to force overtime after blowing a 28-14 lead in the fourth quarter. Regardless, Buford McGee stealed the comeback win for the Chargers, rushing 25 yards to victory of a 34-28 score in overtime. The Dolphins would win 3 of their final 4 games, finishing with the best record in the AFC. In the playoffs, the Dolphins won their games handily by scores of 31-10 and 45-28. In Super Bowl 19, the Dolphins proved to be no match for the 15-1 49ers. After pulling out to a 10-7 lead in the first quarter, the Dolphins gave up 21 points in the second, meaning they were down 28-16 at half. Fortunately, their defense held the 49ers to 10 points in the second half, but unfortunately, the Dolphins couldn't muster anything offensively. They took a 38-16 loss. Their offense was good the next year, but after losing the 1985 AFC Championship game 31-14 to the New England Patriots, they fell off. Most great offenses are like a climax in a book or a movie. The climax is the great season. Just look at the 2016 Falcons scoring 33.8 points a game that year, and in 2017 scoring 22.1. Or even the 2011 Packers scoring 35 points a game to going to 27.1 a game in 2012. It's sad to think that Dan Marino's second season out of his 18 was his peak. And in some ways, the 1984 Dolphins were actually better than the 1999 Rams, 2007 Patriots, and 2013 Broncos.